What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm joined by Daniel Starkand. Today's the day. Wild card is tonight, and the Dodgers have just released their 26-man wild card roster, so Daniel and I are here to break it all down. Here is what we're looking at. Some surprising names on there, I suppose, depending on what you were expecting to see here. My headline I would just start off with, which is this is 26-man roster for a game in which they will almost assuredly not use 26 men. If they use 26 men, something has gone horrifically wrong, or we're into like the 22nd inning of something. So, Daniel, I'll start with you. As you look over this list, obviously Kershaw not on here, obviously Max Muncy not on here. Besides the obvious, what would you say is your biggest observation from looking at this roster?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing that, has to be mentioned is that there's only 10 pitchers, which is not a lot of pitchers, 16 position players. Like you said, this is, we're kind of picking at straws here because, like, they're probably not going to use all 26 guys. A lot would have to go wrong for the Dodgers to even use 20 guys in this game. But with that being said, like, I don't know 16 position players. I don't even know how it's possible to even use all those guys. Like Zach McKinney and Steven Souza Jr., Luke Raley. I don't see any scenario where any of those guys get into this game. But if they would have added 3 more pitchers and took those 3 guys off, I'd be saying the same thing about those 3 pitchers. So I guess I probably would have went with like 1 more pitcher. I think David Price is the name that stands out to me the most who's not on there. He's a guy who could give you some length if you need to, but at the same time they have Tony Gonsolin on the roster who can also give length. But I don't think arguing about the last 5 guys or whatever is going to make a huge difference. At least that's what we hope, because if the Dodgers are getting anywhere close to using all their guys, that means this game went 18, 19 innings. And that means we're each going to have like 2 heart attacks apiece throughout that process. So we might not even be alive to see the end of it. So, I'm a little surprised at only 10 pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, the takeaway to me is almost if they were to advance past this, looking at things. So you've got 3 of your starting pitchers on here. Scherzer, Urias, and Gonsolin would likely be your number 1, your 3, and your 4. I've said all along I wouldn't expect Walker Buehler to be on this roster because there's no scenario in which he enters the game. But with 7 relief pitchers, assuming that they would carry maybe 8, maybe 9 in future rounds, David Price being the odd man out is a really fascinating sort of revelation there. Now, obviously, Justin Brule's not on this roster. Evan Phillips is not on this roster. But Brusdar Graterol does make it. So those were kind of all guys that we felt like were on the fringes. Graterol would have been lower on that list to me, but he makes it here. I'm with you. It's weird. Like, I see a scenario where you run out of pitchers, whereas there's not really ever a scenario where you should run out of hitters. And it's not like adding Souza and Raley and McKinney and these guys is really like adding something to you that you're like, oh, we really appreciate this and we really need this. So I think those are sort of my initial observations. And like I said, I wouldn't worry about Billy McKinney being on here. We can panic when he gets penciled in as a starting first baseman. But beyond that, I mean, there's nothing really surprising here. There's nothing really shocking. Again, it's a 26-man roster for 1 game. The bullpen is going to have plenty of rest both before and after this, so every person is available. Urias is there. I'll be fascinated to see how he's used. I think that'll be an interesting storyline because obviously he's on the roster. So you can imagine that throughout the broadcast, it's going to be like, oh, Julio Urias, is he going to come into this game? Like, I can already see that being a storyline starting in the 4th or 5th inning. And so we'll see how that plays out. Let me ask you one last question. It's the debate that we've kind of been having all along. As you look at this, there were reports yesterday of who was taking ground balls at first base, that kind of thing. Where have you landed as you look forward to the lineup being announced tonight? As your first baseman and as your 3rd outfielder outside of Mookie and Pollock, if you had to land on one place, personally, and a prediction for Dave Roberts if those 2 things are separate.
Yeah, I think for me, and I've thought about this a lot because A, we've talked about it on multiple shows, and B, like it's kind of really the only question mark. Like sitting here talking about the roster, like there's not a ton of surprises, but I think we're all just kind of anxiously, awaiting the lineup to come out because we don't know who's going to start in those 2 spots. So I think where I've landed is I would start Chris Taylor in center field and Cody Bellinger in right field. And I completely understand that both of those guys.
He's like, man, Daniel's taking Mookie Betts out of the lineup. That's a bold take here.
Mookie Betts at first base. No. But I understand that those guys have both been horrible for the last couple months. But for me, at the end of the day, Taylor, he was an all-star. And to me, in a one-game playoff, like where your whole season's on the line, like I'm going to go with the guys that got me there. I'm not going to start putting in guys who have been either part-time players or back and forth between AAA and the big leagues all year in a one-game winner take all. Like I trust Chris Taylor. He's been in big spots before and he's come through with big hits before. So, I trust him there. And then with Cody, it's more about the defense, I guess. Like he'll be batting 8th for me. And maybe you just hope he could, run into one. But I don't really feel too comfortable like with any of the offensive options at first base. Like Pujols, if it was a lefty, he'd be a no-brainer. But against the righty, he doesn't hit righties well. And then Matt Beatty, who I'm sure you're gonna say is who you would start there. That's and I wouldn't be mad if Matt Beatty's starting. But realistically, what's he gonna go 1 for 4 with a single? Like, is that much better than whatever Cody's gonna give you? Maybe that one hit is in a big spot and it's it changes the game. But at the same time, I think I'd rather just hope Cody runs into a homer or something while having the better defense.
Let me first apologize. I realized we had your name wrong this entire time. So with we're going to get to the graphics department there, which is basically me in real time changing your name. So it doesn't even fit now, but there we go. There we go. Well, the shout out to my buddy Rob Morris, who was getting some free pub there for a moment. I mean, to me, like there's only a few indefensible options. At catcher, Austin Barnes, indefensible as far as I'm concerned. At first base, I would say Albert Pujols or Billy McKinney are both indefensible, both because of how bad Pujols is against right-handed pitching and because Billy McKinney adds nothing. I think you could defend a Cody Bellinger selection in first base or in the outfield. I think you can defend a Chris Taylor selection in the outfield. I think you can defend a Gavin Lux selection. I think you can defend a Matt Beatty selection. I'm going to stick with Beatty at first base. I like the left-handed bat there. Scherzer is not a ground ball pitcher. I came up with the numbers. Scherzer's striking out 34% of guys. He's well below the league average in ground balls. And so I think that easily makes the Beatty decision. He's your best offensive guy. He's hitting well right now, and he's hit well consistently throughout the season. No matter what sample size you look at, that one makes sense. I think the outfield, I leaned Gavin Lux initially, and I think I've come around to if you want to put Cody Bellinger out there because, like I said, if I'm going to look at the ground ball rate and say, hey, he's below average ground balls, he's above average as far as how many fly balls he gives up. And so if you want to put Chris Taylor or Cody Bellinger out there, I get that. I would probably lean Taylor just because I think the at-bat quality is going to be a little bit better. If you want to say, hey, just give me all the defense because we're taking two guys that are really bad offensively, I get that too. So, I mean, I even in my own head as I say that, maybe I would actually lean Bellinger because I like the defense. So Beatty and Bellinger is where I would go. But I do think if I had to guess what Dave Roberts does, I would be surprised if it was anything besides Bellinger and Taylor. Bellinger at first and Taylor. I just think that feels like the safe move that Dave Roberts is going to make. And so that's where I think he lands. So we will see. Again, the Dodgers tonight. It's the game to end all games. Hopefully it's not the last game of the Dodgers season. Regardless, Daniel and I will be on live post game. So please make sure to join us for that. We'll be right here, Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube. So that's Daniel Starkand. I had his Twitter handle wrong the entire time, so apologies for that. And I still have it wrong. It's at @DStarkand, right? Yeah, that's all right. It's just a disaster today. Hopefully this is, we're getting all the kinks worked out now. So that's Daniel. I'm Jeff. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you tonight live for the postgame show.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.